When you signed this agreement with the unions over at the Social Security Administration, did you do it purposefully to undermine President Trump on his way in the door?
No, I did it to sustain the big customer service delivery improvements that this greatly depleted agency had made in the course of the year, and to try to staunch the attrition rate and the fact that so many are eligible for retirement. You know, the reduction in staffing is really hurting a lot of seniors in every one of your districts, a lot of people with disability, a lot of our poorest people that are on SSI. I did what I did in order to better serve the American people.
Before we get into this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because what Byron Donalds just exposed in this hearing shows exactly how Washington insiders try to lock in power after voters have already spoken. This is one of the clearest examples yet of bureaucrats putting politics over the Constitution.
Is that right?
Correct.
Can you please explain the difference between the definitions of telework and remote work?
Yes, remote work is 100% from a different location and can include living entirely thousands of miles away. Telework is having the ability to work anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week at a remote location.
Okay. Can an agency force a federal employee to telework? Like similarly, can an agency force a federal employee to show up for work?
Yes, and we saw that happen during COVID-19. There was forced telework that happened, and they should have the ability to force an employee to show up to work. But when you have problematic components that are baked into the cake for the new administration that prevent, such as deputy commissioners at SSA, from having that authority because of a collective bargaining agreement, that's arguably counter to the law.
Do you feel it's within the purview of the President of the United States to set the work schedule for federal employees across the board?
I do, and in particular telework, that's what the Telework Act of 2010 requires.
Ms. Cross, do you agree with that assumption that the President of the United States has the broad authority to set work requirements for federal employees? Well, you can't think about it now, Ms. Cross. We're here. We're on the fly. Do you think it's under the purview of the President to set work requirements for federal employees? Since essentially in our system of government, we have a unitary executive, and the President of the United States is the executive branch.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. O'Malley, do you agree with that assessment that the President of the United States has the unilateral authority for setting work requirements for federal employees?
No, under the law, he has the ability, but
Mr.
it's not
O'Malley.
unilateral. He has to abide by the law. At least in a republic, you abide by the law.
Mr. O'Malley, do you believe that the President of the United States is the executive branch? Whether it's President Trump, President Biden, President Obama, President Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, President Reagan, do you believe that the President of the United States is the unitary executive and is the executive branch?
Yes, and he has to abide under the law. He has to obey the law.
So you mean to tell me that the President of the United States doesn't have the ability to set work requirements?
I'm saying that he does, but he has to do so under the terms and the rule of the law. And so, and contract law and things contained in agreements that are negotiated under the law are things that the president has to be mindful of and should be, and should be guided by.
When you signed this agreement with the unions over at the Social Security Administration, did you do it purposefully to undermine President Trump on his way in the door?
No, I did it to sustain the big customer service delivery improvements that this greatly depleted agency had made in the course of the year, and to try to staunch the attrition rate and the fact that so many are eligible for retirement. You know, the reduction in staffing is really hurting a lot of seniors in every one of your districts, a lot of people with disability, a lot of our poorest people that are on SSI. I did what I did in order to better serve the American people.
But when you set this agreement, knowing that the presidential election had already been decided, did you call Mar-a-Lago and say, hey, what's your opinion on this?
No.
Did you ask President Biden to reach out to President Trump in the matter of transition and say, hey, which way do we want the next president to be able to administer the employees that are under his purview as the unitary executive?
I worked for President Biden. He appointed me, and I was confirmed in a lopsided bipartisan margin by the Senate, and I executed the duties that I was assigned at Social Security to better serve senior citizens, better serve people on SSI, and people with disabilities. That's what I did,
My
Congressman.
counter argument to you, Mr. O'Malley, is that whether it's whatever president we're talking about, they all have the same duty to serve the seniors who were promised something on Social Security, and that mission is going to be executed regardless of party, regardless of president. But, sir, what you did was to essentially do a workaround of the incoming administration. But I'm going to come back to you later. Ms. Grezler, I'm going to come back to you. You stated earlier in your testimony about we do have an issue with some of the federal employees who are doing work, union work, on federal government time. Can you expound upon that?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have any more data on that because the Biden administration stopped collecting that. But if you use what the Obama administration, those figures, and convert them to today's salaries, taxpayers are paying over $300 million per year to pay federal employees to step away from the jobs they're hired for and to instead go do union work on taxpayers' dime.
Mr. Chairman, if you will oblige, what is some of do you have an idea of some of the work that's being done on federal government time for the unions that they're a part of?
That can include negotiations, it could include lobbying Congress, it can include helping employees to file grievances or unfair labor practices if they have their telework policies taken away from them.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that it's in the interest of this committee and frankly of the United States going forward that we find out exactly what work is being done while employees are being paid by the federal government that is not within the purview of the job that they were hired to perform. I yield back.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, let's break this down, because this exchange between Byron Donalds and Martin O'Malley is not just another heated hearing clip. This is about whether elections actually matter, or whether outgoing administrations can quietly sabotage the next president before he even takes office. Byron Donalds starts by doing something refreshingly rare in Congress. He establishes facts. He forces O'Malley to clearly define the difference between remote work and telework. Remote work means federal employees can live anywhere, completely detached from the office. Telework still ties the employee to a duty station, even if they work remotely a few days a week. That distinction matters, because it determines whether agency leadership can actually manage the workforce. Donalds then presses the obvious question. Can a federal agency require employees to show up to work? The answer is yes. It happened during COVID, and the authority never disappeared. So the idea that federal employees suddenly have permanent immunity from reporting to work is pure fiction. This is where the spotlight turns directly on Martin O'Malley and his role at the Social Security Administration. Donalds points out that collective bargaining agreements signed under O'Malley stripped leadership of the ability to set work requirements. In other words, unelected agreements were used to limit executive authority. Donalds then moves to the constitutional issue, and this is where things really heat up. He asks whether the President of the United States is the executive branch. O'Malley eventually concedes the truth. The President is the unitary executive. That means the President is responsible for running the executive branch and setting work requirements for federal employees. But then comes the classic bureaucratic escape hatch. Yes, the President has authority, O'Malley says, but only within the confines of contracts, collective bargaining agreements, and negotiated rules. Translation: bureaucrats and union leaders get to preemptively box in the President before he ever sets policy. And then Donalds drops the question that clearly rattles him. Did you sign this agreement knowing President Trump had already won the election, and did you do it to undermine him on his way in the door? O'Malley denies it, claiming the agreement was about improving customer service and preventing staff attrition. He frames it as compassion for seniors, people with disabilities, and SSI recipients. But let's be clear. Nobody is arguing against serving seniors. The issue is timing and intent. When you lock in sweeping agreements after an election, without consulting the incoming administration, you are not acting as a neutral public servant. You are making a political decision that limits the authority of the next president. Donalds calls it exactly what it is: a workaround. A deliberate attempt to tie the hands of the next administration before it even begins. Then the hearing exposes another bombshell. Federal employees are being paid with taxpayer dollars to do union work instead of their actual jobs. Negotiating contracts, lobbying Congress, filing grievances. And according to testimony, the Biden administration stopped collecting data on how widespread this practice really is. Using older data adjusted for today's salaries, taxpayers could be on the hook for more than $300 million a year for union activities conducted on government time. That's not public service. That's a system designed to protect itself at the expense of the American people. Byron Donalds didn't just grill Martin O'Malley. He exposed how bureaucratic power is entrenched, how unions are used as political shields, and how outgoing administrations quietly undermine incoming presidents. This is why oversight matters. This is why accountability matters. And this is why the left fears members of Congress who actually understand the Constitution and are willing to defend it. If elections are going to mean anything, the president elected by the people has to be able to govern. What we're seeing here is the opposite of democracy. It's administrative sabotage, and Byron Donalds deserves credit for calling it out.